Welcome to Jablam Hockey, folks. I'm your host, Peter Wojciechowski. You can find me on Twitter at Russian98, and you can find our show on Twitter at Jablam Hockey. And of course, you can go on our website, jablamhockey.com. Everything we talk about in the show is on our episode page. So you can go on the episode page while you're listening to the show and follow through and see all the videos and links that we posted on all our Trending Now stuff and all our great guests that we have. And Logan, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me back.
Your Twitter handle is again?
At Hoagie99.
So yeah, as I was saying, we have a huge jam-packed show today. Before we get to Trending Now, what do we have in this episode? Woo! We got Team ISOing the New Jersey Devils with guest John Fisher, who is blogging at allaboutthejersey.com. We have artist Eric Poole, and you can follow him on Instagram at epoole88. So that's EPOOLE 88. And then we're also doing some fantasy up and down again with guest Hayden Soboleski, and he's going to be recommending some ups and downs, so guys that you might want to pick up, guys that you might want to drop, and he's also going to give you a fantasy tip. And then we finish up with some mailbag. If you want, tweet us, email us, go on jablamhockey.com, or tweet at jablamhockey, or tweet at Russia98, or even you tweet Logan at Hoagie99, and you can ask us anything about the show, any comments you want to make, any questions you have. Just tweet or email us, and we will hopefully get to you either on Twitter or on the show. But first, Trending Now. So, it was a busy world in hockey. Man, first off, let's do some Hockey Hall of Fame. Logan.
Yes.
Did you like the class this year?
I was actually surprised that a couple of them weren't in it. Like a Willie O'Ree, I just assumed he was in it, I guess. See, he's been such a... Every year, it seems, we talk about Willie O'Ree being the first black player in the NHL, breaking the color barrier. So I just assumed he was in it. But I'm glad he definitely got honored this time around. Bettman, again, I guess I shouldn't be surprised. He was always going to be in the Hockey Hall of Fame. I kind of thought maybe after he would have retired, but I guess why not do it now? No difference now than later. So, yeah,
to me, it's a bit of a mixed bag. And very wide ranging. Yeah, I was same as you. I was shocked that Willie O'Ree wasn't in there already. But we got the leaders in hockey players with Martin Brodeur, Martin St. Louis, Jana Hefford, and then we have the Russian great Alexander Yakushev. And then, Gary Bettman. I'm not one of those people that boo Gary Bettman and love to do him. I think he's still done a lot for hockey, even though there has been some ups and downs with everything that's going on, and even the whole legal debate with the concussions and stuff. And obviously that comes out on the exact same day they get inducted, which was weird too.
Yeah.
I don't know. But congrats to those women and men to being inducted. Did you want to say a quick thought or story?
Well, I kind of I didn't realize that St. Louis, I think was going to get in there. I was maybe not sure the first voting round. Brodeur was always going to get in there. But with St. Louis, the Tampa Bay Lightning did something nice that day. They were going to play in Buffalo on Tuesday. So the Hall of Fame stuff was mostly on the Monday. And 6 of the players and the coach came up from Buffalo to Toronto to wish him well, I guess. The former teammates and former coach. And it was also split between 2 teams because there's now 3 former Rangers that are currently on the Tampa Bay roster that played with St. Louis when he was in New York as well. So it was very it was a nice gesture to come not all the way from Buffalo, but make the time to get down here and wish him well on that day. That was Stamkos, Stamkos, Killorn, Kucherov, Hedman, McDonough, Girardi, and J.T. Miller, and the coach, Cooper, all came up from Tampa to Buffalo to Toronto to give them hugs and kisses and a solid handshake.
I like the kisses. That's a cool thing. It's a very hockey-esque thing to do.
I mean, St. Louis, he was always a very friendly guy with everybody. So
yeah, that's pretty good. Neat stuff by the Lightning. One thing I wanted to mention was that growing up, I was a big fan of like the Mario Lemieux and the Patrick Roy. One reason, because they're born on such a great day, October 5th. But
why is that such a great day?
Because another great person's born on the exact same day. But for some reason, I fell in love with Brodeur more than Patrick Roy. I don't know. I liked automatically Patrick Roy because I figured he was one of the best, and he was such a standout. And he was very open and with the media and very, at least verbally. But Brodeur was just such a cool cucumber between the pipes.
Yeah.
And he was cool to watch as a kid. And then, of course, me not being such a great hockey player, but I played ball hockey a lot, I found a Martin Brodeur mask, and I immediately was the goalie every time we played ball hockey. My buddies, growing up in Brampton, I played with a lot of Punjabi and different Indian people growing up, and that's why my nickname is also Russian98 on Twitter. It's because most of the guys just call me Russian, and my favorite number was 98 because I couldn't beat Gretzky. But so when I played, I played defense, and they're like, "Do you want to play, in the net?" And I'm like, "Sure." And then I found the Brodeur mask, and I loved it, and I was great. And they always wanted me to play goalie, so that was great playing on different teams in ball hockey. The Brodeur mask, and I just fell in love with Brodeur, and he was such calm demeanor between the pipes and such a great goalie. I really, really liked him, and I did enjoy watching him more than I did Patrick Roy for some reason.
Well, for a Toronto fan, I imagine Roy was always in Montreal, the enemy. And then Brodeur, Jersey, he's always gotten this, he's off to the side type. You don't really worry about him in Jersey, but he was always winning, so. Yeah.
That's right. Let's do, and which we haven't really talked about too much on my show at least, Nylander. More players are commenting now because it's getting close to that deadline of December 1st. Marner, they asked Marner, and he pretty much just says, "It sucks just thinking about it." I'm pretty much on that same wavelength. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to talk about it. I'm still crossing my fingers and hoping things get done. Gretzky, when he was asked, he said, "When I was that age, I just wanted to play." So, yeah, it's a tough thing, but of course there are trade rumors that we might want to talk about.
Well, there has to be at this point, right?
Yeah, so I think it was just last week, and so a couple of days ago, obviously, that Elliot Freeman reported that Kyle Dubas has put it out there that he's looking to trade, if the price is right, William Nylander. And the rumor was a top 4 defenseman and maybe a top 9 forward in that area per se. And so the rumors are going wild, and we can mention a couple of them. I know Koshan, I believe, from the Toronto Sun, tweeted out a rumor that was from the Ducks, Montour, and something else is possible. Then we had, obviously, on Hockey Night in Canada, or at least the guys from Hockey Night in Canada, Kyprios mentioned, I think he mentioned Montour and Nick Ritchie, or was it the other defenseman?
It might have been Manson. I'm not positive. Yeah. I think I had the game on, but I missed that segment. But it was Colby that wanted or heard. I think he just wanted Paryanko from St. Louis.
Yeah, I'm hoping more of the latter. That maybe St. Louis is looking to move a guy like Parayko, because I've always liked him, and I actually kind of like St. Louis. But they are kind of struggling right now, so maybe they want to mix things up.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they should mix things up on the back end at least.
Well, and I'm not sure with the cap room as well. Someone was also mentioning to me, like, that doesn't really solve cap issue for Marner or Matthews coming in as well. But that we might be able to sort that after the fact too. I'm not entirely sure. So
the other rumors that were thrown out there was Jake Muzzin plus. Is it with Pearson? Are they adding another salary on there? Obviously, it's not Pearson.
Yeah, not anymore anyways.
So we'll talk about that in a little bit. There's Pesce or some of the other defensemen on Carolina, but Pesce keeps on being brought up, and maybe Pesce and Furland. I don't know why they would move Furland right now, because he's fitting in really well right now.
He's doing great in Carolina.
Yeah, so that would be a weird move. In Philadelphia, I know a lot of people are like, oh, give us Provorov for Nylander. Maybe that's an even trade. But again, if I was them, why move him? So there's rumors of maybe Sanheim and Wheel. I don't know them as well, but I think Sanheim has a good upside, so that could be possible.
I've heard good things about Wheel. I just can't remember what they are at this moment, but I've heard he's actually solid number 4, number 3.
The rumor always from Vancouver has been at least maybe looking at getting a guy like Tanev or, Goody. But Tanev and Goldobin, I don't know if either projects really well in the future because the Leafs are moving forward. Mm-hmm. And like Goldobin, again, obviously he's young, but I don't know if he projects really high value in terms of that aspect. From Minnesota, there's Matt Dumba. That might work.
Dumba. Dumba is a good gritty guy.
Yeah, I don't know. That might work. Then Edmonton is at the end of the run for Puljujarvi. I don't know.
I hadn't heard this rumor, Puljujarvi and Benning.
Yeah.
I don't mind it, honestly, as an Edmonton fan.
Yeah, well, again, it is Nylander.
Yeah,
so
Nylander has a high upside.
Yeah, he's already putting up 60 points, so there's a very good chance he can still hit a 90-point value. Still very possible. Then from Winnipeg, I actually don't mind a guy like Jacob Trouba coming over and Cop, if that's been thrown around, Yeah. And then maybe in Columbus with Murray, because, the projection of him was very high, but maybe it's not as high anymore, his ceiling. So, a lot of things thrown around there. Are any of these ones do you think is possible or that you really like that we've mentioned?
Well, the Edmonton one, Puljujarvi and Benning. I'm not a big fan of Benning. I do like Puljujarvi. I think I did like the move of sending him down as well to the AHL, but a straight-up trade for both those for Nylander. I don't know if the cap room works with Nylander wanting, I think he still wants like 6 to 8 mil. I don't know if we can fit that in at Edmonton.
Yeah.
But Murray, Dumba, straight up for Dumba, I think that would be a good deal. Mm-hmm. Dumba seems to be hitting a good stride in Minnesota, and you kind of want to. I think Toronto could use a hitting defenseman back there. But these are all good. Like
some of them are, you don't know. It's a very toss up because with the whole salary cap era.
Yeah.
Some of them obviously aren't even doable. And then some of them, in my mind, wouldn't be very bad. I wouldn't mind getting, obviously, Parayko for Nylander. Like, even straight for straight would be fine with me. Yeah. I think maybe it mixes the things up for St. Louis. But like I said before, I don't know where they would replace a guy like him on the back end. So that's a tough one.
And Nylander's a fourth banana in Toronto, right? You got Tavares, you got Austin, you got Marner. And then Nylander. Nylander could be a solid number 2, number 3 in 30 other teams, essentially.
Yeah, that is true. He could be same thing like with Toronto, trying to push a guy like Kessel to be the number 1 when he makes sense to be a 2 or a 3. That's why I feel that Carolina is still the front runner because of cap space and with the logjam of younger, good defensemen. You could say?
Yeah, they don't. Obviously, Hannafin's now in Calgary for Furland and a couple other pieces. So it was they lost a decent young defenseman who probably Toronto would have wanted, but they do still seem to have an abundance of them somehow.
Yeah, well, it was the Hamilton for him. So, yeah, I don't know how great Pesce is. I think there'd need to be a little bit more than for just him, so we'll see.
Yeah.
I don't mind the Dumba move, but I don't know. Maybe a little bit more needs to be added there. But I do like Trouba as well, but I don't know how Winnipeg can fit a guy like Nylander with already the top 6 that they have there.
That's true.
So I don't know why they would want to make that kind of move.
He might be a fourth banana again.
Yeah. So there's a lot of rumors out there, and it's very possible that we'll see what happens. But it's not too far away, December 1st.
No, it's not. And is this now the record? There's not been, no, maybe not a record, but like a player of this caliber taking this long to sign a contract? I can't remember. I thought I heard something about that, but
yeah, I also heard something about that. But I know players have stayed back in the KHL.
Yeah.
So I didn't get it. Maybe it depends on from where they were born or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Tom Wilson comes back. He gets his suspension reduced from 20 games to 14, and of course he's already missed 16. So it's okay, Tom. You're going to get some money back. It's ridiculous. I think we were talking about earlier that it's the same arbitrator that has dealt with NFL and even the Austin Watson suspension. So a lot of people don't like this arbitrator, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and I don't know how the league must have a pool or just a random person, plops on a court desk or something like that, and he just kind of is the lucky guy that picks it up. But he seems to have a reason for dropping the suspensions from X to Y. What those reasons are, I don't know if we'll ever know, really. They just are.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't like it, but at the same time, I don't get where the NHLPA is kind of coming from, saying they're protecting their players.
Yeah.
So are you not protecting the ones that are getting injured or concussed or even in society? Like, somebody needs to protect somebody needs to set up for the victims as well, no?
Yeah, there should be some victim advocacy in the NHL system too. Like, you just sitting down, it's like, you've done a stupid thing, sit down. Like,
yeah, I don't know where that is coming from in terms of supporting someone, but it's, in my opinion, it's a little crazy, especially like when a player and a veteran like Matt Cullen, he says it's a bad look.
Yeah,
basically when you're comparing for a league with a player with multiple suspensions, can she just keep appealing all of them multiple times?
Is there a limit? Is there a cap limit of you can only do it 3 times, or like you can only go through this once you've hit your 20 games? You can't appeal. I don't know. Once you go past your, I don't know. It's you just keep doing it. I guess there's no if there's no rule saying you have to stop, then just keep doing.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't get it. But we'll see what Tom Wilson. Obviously, if you didn't see, he comes back and then he scores and crashes and destroys Dubnyk all in one.
Yeah,
it's very fitting for Tom Wilson to be doing that kind of thing. At least Dubnyk didn't get injured.
He came back in Tom Wilson fashion, right? Like,
yeah, that's just crazy. All right, sad news to report that Stan Lee has passed away at the age of 95, and me, as a huge superhero and Marvel fan, I've always really looked up to Stan Lee, and I love all his comics. I used to read comics as a kid, and now I watch almost every single superhero show on TV, on Netflix, and the movies. I've seen them all. I'm like there, maybe not opening day. I am getting old. I like to go on Tuesday to get a little bit of a cheaper deal, and I wait a week maybe or two when it's not lineups like crazy.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of those lineups, but
yeah, but I've seen everything, and it's sad to see him pass away. We do an homage to him, and that's why I bring Eric Pooley to the show later on. But it was really cool also for him to do the whole thing with the NHL in 2011 when he helped make the NHL Guardians, and he pretty much made a superhero type player drawn up for every single NHL team.
Yeah, those made the circulations again on like Reddit and Twitter, and I don't know if I forgot about them or just pushed them out of my memory. Mm-hmm. They didn't do as well, but they were. It was nice to look back on some or look at those again. It's like, oh, these aren't actually that terrible. Mm-hmm. But they were. I'm sure there could have been a comic book in there somewhere for all of them, essentially.
Yeah. They weren't the best, but they're still pretty cool, and it was cool that he gave an effort to the NHL as well. All right, and before we finish trending now, the trade that happened just earlier, that was, I believe, Carl Hagelin from the Pittsburgh Penguins gets traded for Tanner Pearson of the L.A. Kings. I don't know. My first thought was, it's a cat move, right? But apparently Pearson actually has like a 3.75 cap hit contract, and Pittsburgh kept some of Hagelin's contract, which expires at the end of the year. I don't get this trade at all, except for Pearson being a lot younger and Hagelin obviously slowing down a bit speed-wise.
Yeah, Pearson is younger. It can be a cap hit thing for LA as opposed to Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. LA loses or gains for $3 or $4 million a year at the end of this season. So it doesn't actually help them. It doesn't help them out for this season, which they definitely need help. But other than like Rutherford wanting to shake things up, like he said he was going to do, he's just I'll take your third liner for my third liner. We'll see what happens. They're both struggling. Well, Pittsburgh's not struggling, but they're struggling in their own regards to like they're not winning as much as they should be. So
yeah, I guess they're both not playing very well right now. Hagelin has 1 goal, 2 assists, 3 points in the 16 games, and Tanner Pearson's at abysmal, I think 1 assist in like 17 games. So he's really in a bad spot right now. Hopefully maybe it's just trying to help both players too. That way.
Different scene or change of scenery for both of them.
Yeah. Or maybe it is a cat move by the Kings and it could open up something bigger in the future. Maybe it is a Nylander move.
Maybe.
All right. And last but not least, I don't know if you noticed, Logan, the hit today. You were working on a game tonight. What game was that?
That was the Winnipeg Washington game.
Yes. And during that game, I believe it was Morrissey who hit TJ Oshie in the corner and then basically threw him down. Does that resemble anything that you can remember with maybe a suspension that happened a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, there was immediate comparisons drawn to Peterson. So Oshie, in the last minute of the game, Oshie was on the board. I forget who actually hit him. He hits him and then seems to suplex him on his back. It was a good suplex. I guess that is suspension worthy. The difference being, I think the guys on air talked about it being like there was no pause. It seemed to be like a hit, fluid movement through. But I guess when the guy lands on his back, that seems to indicate there was some change of direction from hitting a guy into the boards to both landing on your back. I don't know.
Yeah, this one seems slightly different that Oshie did look like he was already kind of falling backwards at the same time. So at the moment, I'm not spinning the wheel of suspensions that they do over there. Maybe they do that. I don't know. But I don't see a suspension coming with this. But when you've already set a precedent, like we talked about and I mentioned with that one, I don't know how they almost can't, or at least they should at least post and like with a PR move saying this is why we're not specifically suspending. I think it was Morrissey on this hit.
Yes, that sounds about right.
Play. They should specifically say da 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 da. Oshie was slipping. There wasn't as much of a rock bottom effort by him on that play. So something that-esque that why we won't maybe see a suspension on it.
Yeah, and Oshie actually took a hit from Malkin last week that knocked him out for a little bit. That didn't result in suspension, but did have suspension talks with it. So he's been a couple weeks in a row where he's on the receiving end of a couple not dirty hits, but not terribly clean either. So I don't know, that's just a string of bad luck for him, or
we'll have to wait and see.
I guess.
Time for this week's Team ISO, and of course, it's where we go out into the blogospheres and the podcasts, and we get a better analysis, much better than mine, of course, of those teams. And this week, we are Team ISOing the New Jersey Devils with guest John Fisher. He is the lead writer for All About the Jersey, which is a part of SB Nation. That's allaboutthejersey.com, the website. You can find John on Twitter at JK Fisher, Fischer. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Peter, and thank you for spelling my last name correctly. Not very many people do that correctly.
Is it it's the same spelling as Yuri Fisher, I believe?
Yeah, absolutely. Same as him, but I'm not Czech. I'm from Madison.
Let's get right into it. Before we get into how the Devils aren't playing so well, big factor is what is going on with Corey Schneider. We know he's coming back from an injury now, but Corey was considered one of the top goaltenders in the league, and it looks like he's really fallen off a large cliff. 3 losses this season, but going back to last season, he finished 10 losses last season, I think, so that's about 16 straight losses. If you include the games he didn't start, that's 16 games he's played without a win. I think his last win was, 2017? So it's possible he might get no wins in the whole calendar year. Do you have any inclination about what's going on with Corey?
Well, last season was last season. So let's talk about this season.
Okay.
So Schneider made his season debut actually in Tampa Bay after Keith Kincaid got lit up for 7 goals by Tampa Bay. So he got some garbage time minutes, and then he made his first full start against Detroit. And unfortunately for Schneider, he came in just as the Devils were mired in their slump, which, was typified by their road trip. They were on a 7-game road trip that ended on Sunday. They went 1-6. It didn't matter if Schneider was in net or Kincaid was in net. The Devils were getting bodied by everybody not named the Pittsburgh Penguins. They weren't losing these games closely. They weren't playing well. They were giving up loads of shots. And when you give up loads of shots, you're likely to give up big scoring chances. And when you give up big scoring chances, you're giving up goals that aren't really the goaltender's fault. There were a lot of goals on the flank, goals on backdoor, goals off turnovers, goals where Brian Boyle sticks his 6'7" frame in front of your face and says, well, try to make a save through me. That being said, Schneider has not played particularly well. He hasn't reverted to the form he showed before 2016, where he really was one of the top shot stoppers in the league. And part of that is related to coming back from injury. Part of that is the fact that he is in his early 30s, and it may be unfortunately possible that age is starting to show here. It's also possible that, he cannot be a guy who stands on his head and, takes on 40 shots and, you hope he can stop 39 of them. I mean, ultimately the big complaint is that he can't steal a game, which is a double-edged sword. When you have to say your goaltender needs to steal a game, it's not necessarily just an indictment of the goaltender, it's also an indictment of the other 18 guys in front of him. And unfortunately for Schneider and Kincaid, on this road trip, the Devils were just terrible. Absolutely terrible. So I'm confident he'll pick up a winning result at some point in 2018. And hopefully the 18 guys in front of him or the 18 guys in front of Kincaid can actually play like decent hockey against a team not named the Pittsburgh Penguins.
I guess. But they've done well against them somehow, and that has caused them to make some changes over there already.
Yeah, it's the weirdest thing. Like, the Devils beat them 5-1, and looked, it was a high event game, a very offensive game, and the Devils came out big winners. Brian Boyle got a hat trick. It was wonderful. And then last night, the Devils hosted Pittsburgh and, again, bodied them 4-2. It was a little closer of a game, but, the Devils were the better team on the ice. They fully earned the win. And it was just like night and day difference from the 3 previous games where they lost, 3-7 to Ottawa, 1-6 to Toronto, 2-5 to Winnipeg, and looked miserable the entire time.
So they start the season 4-1. Kincaid obviously is playing well then. Then the sky kind of fell through the roof with the 6-8-1 record. Well, now 7. So there was only 2 wins prior to last night. For last in the Eastern Conference.
Yep.
What is the whole issue going on with the whole up and down and the night and day thing that you've mentioned?
Well, unfortunately, there's a lot of problems with this. You don't just lose a whole bunch of games just on one thing or one thing alone. As much as I'd love to sit here and say, it's the goaltending, or their shooting percentage went in the toilet. It's not as simple as that. A lot of the games that they lost on this road trip, and even before then, because they only won 1 game against Florida, after winning those first 4 games, the Devils were not moving the puck well. They were losing their men on defense. They were losing pucks on zone exit, so they're giving pucks away, giving the other team extra opportunities to attack, and they're doing a lot of scrambling in their own end. So, there's a big mantra, not mantra, but a catchphrase, for lack of it, maybe is more appropriate, that Ray Shero said upon hiring John Hines, was that we want to be a fast, attacking, and supportive hockey team. Well, the Devils haven't been fast. They certainly haven't been attacking because they're too busy trying to figure out which end is up in these games, and they're certainly not supportive. And the supportive factor has been the real killer here, because when one guy loses his man on defense, 4 other guys are completely confused. They're puck watching. They're not covering the back door. They're not talking to each other. And they're not making the right plays, the little plays, the big plays, the medium-sized plays. And, that results in not only losing, but losing big. And that's the big thing about this this slump, is that the Devils aren't losing these games 2-3 or 1-2 or 3-4 in most cases. They're losing these games by 3 goals or more. And, again, I'd love to sit here and say, the goaltending's been terrible and that's a problem. But both Kincaid and Schneider have been lit up, and a lot of it is because the guys in front of them have not been doing their jobs very well. That being said, against Pittsburgh, for some reason, they get it together. The coaches don't act as if the game is completely lost after a bad shift or a bad period. They showed resilience. They showed, they stuck to their game plan, and they were able to pick apart Pittsburgh's holes. Strangely, they can't do that against the Ottawa Senators, but they can do this against the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Odd. Very odd.
Very odd.
Speaking about somebody who's been playing very well this year, Kyle Palmieri.
Yes.
Maybe he's cooled off a little bit, but wow. 7 goals in the first 4 games to start the season. Obviously the best in franchise history.
Yep.
Still leading the team in goals, 10 second points obviously behind Taylor Hall.
Oh, yeah.
Why is Kyle looking so much even better this year?
Well, shooting 30% makes anybody looks great. But more seriously, he's just been hitting his shots well. And it's not just the shooting. He's making passes that become goals. Shots, he set up Nico Hischier for 2 goals earlier this year, and both of them were literally redirections of his shots. He's creating goals with his shot. Palmieri has always been a big shooter. He's been a very powerful shooter. He likes to get a lot of weight behind his shot, and especially on the power play. 5 of those 10 goals are on the power play. He loves to sit in the Ovechkin zone and just bomb one-timers. And if you give him space, he will beat you with that shot. And the Devils have been very good about creating those spaces when they're able to set up and when they're able to get the passing lane open to him. Hall to Palmieri is a common sight. Butcher to Palmieri is a common sight. And, you keep bombing away and they start going in. I don't think he's really doing anything different. I think John Hines and the coaching staff has just done the smart thing by keeping it simple with Palmieri. He's good in the right circle on power plays. He's good on right wing with Taylor Hall as his opposite winger. He can work well with Zajac or Nico Hischier at center. That's your matchup. Those are your combinations. Put him out there, let him go, let him fire away. He will make things happen. Hall will give him the puck. Others will give him the puck. and he will fire. And he has been. So you're right. He has cooled off a bit, but, the Devils have utilized his hot streak well. And they got those 4 straight wins, largely because of those 7 goals he scored.
And then on the other hand, there's Pavel Zacha, who's supposedly one of the future cores on this team, right?
Yeah.
But why is he struggling so much out of the gate? No points in 11 games.
No.
And but they brought him back up, and I guess he looked a little bit better. You were talking about before the record in the last night game.
Yeah, against Pittsburgh last night, Zacha and his line shut down Evgeny Malkin's line, which is not an easy matchup. I mean, that's the killer thing about Pittsburgh, is that they can split their stars and create matchup problems. And even though he didn't get a point against Pittsburgh, he played very well against Malkin. He played very well in the penalty kill, which is one of his strengths, actually. And, he did a lot of those quote-unquote little things that help plays, go forward in the right direction. He was basically being supportive on a team that badly needed some supporting players. It is not good to see any forward with no points in 11 games, especially since, the beginning of the season, the Devils were scoring goals left, right, and center. How come this guy, of all guys, did not get a point? But he's a good litmus test to tell me if you're a guy if you're a guy or a girl who really pays attention to the game. Because watching him play, looking at the underlying numbers at Natural Stat Trick and Corsica, you realize there's a player here. And he may not be the player that will be a core player. He won't be maybe he's not worth his top 10 draft status from however many years ago, but he's one of those complementary players at a minimum that you'd like to have on your team that does things well. And that's why when he came up, he displayed that immediately, whereas other guys who have been called up, like a Joey Anderson, Brett Cini, Igor Yakovlev on the defense, they get their opportunities and the results have been mixed at best. Zacha came in and did his job.
Hey, in Toronto, we've got Freddie the GOAT. He's got no points, but man, is he the bee's knees. Just don't tell that to Jeff O'Neill. He's doing the right things, getting the puck in deep, and, the stats geeks love him. All right. Looking forward, I had the Devils in a 50-50 playoff spot, but it doesn't look so great right now. Where do you see them by season's end? Do you think they have still a playoff shot? What do you think?
Well, before the season, we do this post game preview. Like, we break everything down about the team ahead of the season. And on the last day, we do predictions. And last 2 seasons ago, before 2017-18, I said, well, this team's probably going to come in last. And they ended up making the playoffs. So take this with a grain of salt. But before this season, I said that the Devils are going to finish 6th in the division. They'll be competitors. They'll be in the mix for a while, but I think between the Metropolitan Division maybe not being as advantageous, expecting the Atlantic Division to be stronger, which has certainly been the case as of right now. No Metropolitan team has a wild card spot. It's owned pretty solidly by Buffalo and Montreal, and that blocks out the division. So as a result, I don't see the Devils necessarily making the playoffs. I mean, granted, the start went well, but when you go 1-6 on the road on a road trip, and you're currently 1-7 overall on the road, you ain't making the playoffs with that. It doesn't matter how great you are at home. You got to take care of business on the road, and the Devils have not been able to do that yet. Now, that being said, it's November 14th as we're recording this, so is it possible for the Devils to make this up? Yes. Do I think it'll be enough? I think the factors outside of the division and the fact that the margin for errors are now smaller, I still don't think it'll happen. I think finishing 6th in the division is still possible, though. So at least my prediction might be right.
Except for the last 2 years, you sound like the usual Maple Leafs fan, just a little bit more on the negative side.
Well, I wouldn't call it negative. It's just that, the Devils haven't been a good 5-on-5 team under John Hines. I mean, special teams, the power play has gotten cold, and, you just come off a 1-6 road trip. I mean, there's not really a lot to be positive about. Yeah. It is what it is. As I said earlier, I'm not here to spit sunshine. It's, it's the reality of the situation. This team needs to prove that they're good before we start saying that they're good.
Yeah. or you don't have high hopes, and if they do something well, you're very pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
All right. Before you go, John, who are a prospect or two that you'd recommend that might have a really big impact on the Devils roster in the next year or 2 or 3 years?
All right, well, there's two names that come to mind. First and foremost is Ty Smith. He's a defenseman. He was the Devils' first-round draft pick in 2018. He actually had a pretty long stay in training camp this year with the Devils. As an 18-year-old coming out of juniors, that's really impressive for a defenseman. So the fact that the Devils were even thinking about keeping him around or even giving him a couple games before sending him back to Spokane really speaks to his talent. And he is actually doing very, very, very well in the WHL right now. So he's definitely someone to watch for in the immediate future. Switching gears and going a little outside of the box here is another defenseman who has been a pleasant surprise, Jeremy Davies out of Northeastern. Northeastern's not a big college school, not a huge program, but he jumped onto that roster and made an instant impact with scoring from the blue line, playing big minutes. He's currently a junior now with Northeastern, and he's just piling up the points over and over again. Northeastern, he's one of their most important players, and even though, again, not a big program. It's not like BC or BU, but don't be surprised if he gets an NHL contract offer after his junior year, signs with the Devils, maybe plays in a year in Binghamton, and then comes up and shows that he can play in the NHL. I mean, when you get your late round draft picks to be productive at their level and have a shot at pro hockey, that's a great thing. And best case scenario, he's the defensive version of a Brett Seney or a Jesper Bratt, where late round draft pick becomes a success story.
Sound like some good prospects you have there.
Yeah.
All right, John, thank you for coming on the show. You can find John on Twitter at JKFischer, Fischer. And you can obviously go on the website, allaboutthejersey.com, and read all his blogs. Thank you, John, for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Peter.
Cool. And yeah, you can go on our website, jablamhockey.com, check out the episode, or you can specifically go on jablamhockey.com on our Team ISO page and click on specific teams. And for this season, obviously, if you click on this one, you'll hear all about what John has to say about the Devils. John, again, thank you for coming on the show. All right, on today's show, I'm going to pay a little homage to the late, great Stan Lee. I enjoyed watching his films. I'm a huge superhero fan, and I love the art that he's always done, the creators he's created. So on the show today, we have Eric. And where are you from?
I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Cool.
Born and raised Yinzer.
Nice.
Yeah.
Are you at all a Stan Lee fan, and what have you liked of his artwork?
Well, not so much his artwork, but yes. I mean, I grew up reading Marvel comics. My comic of choice growing up was X-Men, and X-Men, X-Force, X-Factor, you name it. If it was a mutant, I probably read it. So in terms of like what Stan Lee created, obviously I followed that along those lines, because I know he created X-Men, which obviously that was a huge influence on my artwork and growing up. And yeah, so it's like you, I'm also a big fan of the Marvel movies. It's kind of cool to see, the heroes you grew up reading on the big screen, and it's going to be weird not to have his cameos in there anymore. I mean, I know that's, kind of minor to say, but it's weird that he's just not going to be there to be in these movies anymore. But hey, I mean, he created a lot of good stuff and inspired a lot of people, writing-wise, artist-wise, and yeah, so he's going to be missed, no doubt about that.
It's sad. By paying homage to him, I wanted to get somebody that I really like their artwork as well, and especially in the hockey community. I think it was in 2011 when Stan Lee created the NHL Guardians, and he created a character for every single team, and that automatically put me on, oh, Eric, I love his art. He does pretty much a similar thing, so I thought maybe there was a connection there or something. But, yeah, first off, how did you get started with your artwork, and then how did you get to doing like the whole sports teams?
Well, I've been drawing basically as long as I can remember. I just, started drawing superheroes. Another big influence on me growing up was Transformers. That was my cartoon of choice growing up. So I have like old sketches and drawings of like Optimus Prime and Megatron, whatever. But so basically it just kind of never really stopped. Like you just keep drawing and it's like, oh, okay, we'll draw this. Let's see if I can draw that. But I never really thought to make it a career until I was in college. I went to the University of Pittsburgh, and my senior year, it was just my notebooks were just filled with drawings instead of notes, and it was kind of like I enjoyed this too much. I needed to try to figure out how to make a living doing it. And then from there, I just found jobs in like print shops, screen printing, stuff like that. I was using like the hand-drawn drawing that I like to do and then incorporated that onto the computer. So then eventually that became my career. I'm now a graphic illustrator and I love it. It's great. For the sports, we'll go back to the Guardian Project. Mm-hmm. I vaguely remember when that came out. I remember looking at the final product and kind of thinking, this is kind of interesting and not particularly in a good way, but I kind of like that hockey and comics were kind of combining. Yeah. Which, like I said, the end product wasn't the greatest, and I know it's kind of ridiculed now, but hey, it's comics and hockey. You can't beat that. Sports artwork kind of started back in, 2013, because the Penguins were playing the Bruins, and they got slaughtered in the Eastern Conference Final. But prior to that, I decided just to do a matchup on artwork. I don't know. I was like, I'll draw a Penguin. He'll be pretty buff, and I'll have him going against a Bear. He'll be a Bruin. And posted that artwork. And I was like, that turned out pretty nice. And then I think the Kings were playing the Blackhawks in that. Is that right? Yeah, 2013 was Kings of Blackhawks. So I drew them, and I was like, oh, that's pretty nice. I kind of liked how that turned out. But by then it was the end of the year. So I'm like, well, maybe I'll do this again next year, just with more teams. So then in 2014 was when I really started to go full scale on the hockey artwork, and it kind of blew up. One of my friends posted it on his Twitter account, because I didn't have Twitter or anything like that. It's drew, draw just to draw and say I did it. And then it kind of took off from there, and I was kind of like, more people like this than I thought they would. So it's kind of been taken off ever since, and I've been, refining styles and doing all the teams and, doing the Stanley Cup pile at the end, which a lot of people like, and I enjoy doing that too. It's just a lot of work to get done, but I don't think I'll stop now because I enjoy doing it. So that's kind of what.
They look fabulous. I love them, and yes, the NHL Guardians one was a little bit more to be desired in some of them, and I think you've really taken something similar to that and really taken it to the next level, and they look great. I love them.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
They were just...
Go ahead.
The Guardian Project was just... I almost want to say too comic booky and not as hockey-ish. Like, if hockey-ish is a word. Mm-hmm. Like, I was trying to just basically make it more team-oriented and, like, just hockey. Like, I grew up drawing logos, hockey logos, and I wanted, like, the colors of the jerseys, and I just like that aspect of it, making them as colorful as possible, but based on the team as opposed to, like, the Guardian Project was just, they just created characters, and it was fine. It was just, it seemed to take a lot out of hockey. It didn't have much to do with hockey. So, that's just my thoughts.
What gave you the idea of doing the whole pile-up thing as well?
Let's see. I don't really remember the basis for that. I think it was just one of those things where I thought it would be a good idea. And it was like, I wonder if I can pull that off. And I think that's all there was. It wasn't anything like, I don't think there was any influence from anything. I don't really remember. I just remember it was just like, I wonder if I could pull that off. Yeah, the losing team's on the bottom, winning team on the top. Why not? And then the first year I know was the Kings in 2014, which I really liked it. And then actually there was a Kings fan that got that tattooed on herself. So I was like, well, this must be worth doing every year. If people are that into it that they want to get, get this permanently inked on their body. So that's why I've been doing it ever since. So, and each one, I try to make them different every year, but the hard part about that is just trying to make 15 teams look sad in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So I know I do what I can, and it's sometimes like the playoffs just kind of make the artwork easier. Like if something funny happens in the playoffs, then I'll try to incorporate that in the pile. I think like 2014 was the year the Sharks blew an 0-3 lead to the Kings. So naturally in the pile, it's like, well, they choked, so the Sharks choking on stick. So little things like that I like. Some playoffs are harder to do that than others. But yeah, I don't know. It's the basis for it. I think it was just an idea. I was like, I wonder if I could do this. Let's see if I could do it. And I did. So
nice.
That's all.
Is there any one in particular you like the most? Like the Winnipeg Jets one I like because it's kind of like the hockey stick is a blade. And
yes, his tail fin.
And he probably does look a little Transformer-ish now that we're talking about it.
Yeah, entirely on purpose. It's a tribute to, like I said, Transformers were huge in my life growing up, and I'm still a fan. So it's kind of like, well, yeah, why not? Let's make him a Transformer. So that was intentional. The one that's near and dear, obviously, is the Penguins, and just because he was the first one, and he's not wearing a shirt, which I never really thought of to begin with, but everyone now comments why he's the only one not wearing a jersey. Mm. But the only reason he isn't was because when I originally started it, I was basing them off of the Penguins logo, where he doesn't wear a jersey. He's just Penguin skating. So he's up there just because he's the first one and he's still used, and everyone else has been kind of redone. I'm trying to think through them. The Jets really nice. I don't mind the Duck. The Anaheim Duck's pretty nice. Mm-hmm. And I really like the Devil, the New Jersey Devil. I think they're pretty nice. But they're all nice. I like them all. If I didn't like them, I'd redo them. So yeah, I've been trying the ones that have been used a lot, I'll redo. So there's a couple teams I need to redo just to keep it fresh.
One that I noticed which was pretty cool. You did the Gagarin Cup for the KHL. Mm-hmm. Was there a reason behind that one, or you just did it as well for fun?
Mostly for fun. I'm on my Instagram account. I've noticed I've gotten a lot of followers from Russia. So it was kind of like hey, you're following me. Let's give you something I know you guys will know more about than me. So, I just did it. And I've been asked to do their entire playoffs, mm-hmm. but I don't know if I have the time to get that done with everything else that goes on. But I mean, it's doable. I think their playoffs go through March, which is kind of when I'm just kind of finishing everything up on my freelance schedule to get ready for the playoffs in April. I think that's right. Their timing's not quite with the Stanley Cup playoffs, but it's close. But that was basically it. I knew I had a lot of followers in Russia, so I was like, well, let's see how this goes over. And it went over pretty well, so I'll probably do it again this year and stuff like that. But I get a lot of requests from European leagues now, too, that I try to meet, but sometimes I can't. It's just like I just can't carve out the time to get everything done that I'd like to get done. But yeah, KHL's fine.
Hey, I'm glad that you got to do the Akbars Kazan. That's the team that I follow. So
okay,
it looks pretty good.
Are they doing pretty good this year? They started, right? Yeah, they're mid-season.
Yeah, it's mid-season. It's still going. We'll see how it goes. I usually follow a little bit more later on and see how they're doing.
Gotcha.
All right. And before we go, where can people contact you, Eric?
Well, you can follow me on Instagram. You can follow me on Twitter. I usually just post a lot of my artwork on Instagram more frequently than anywhere else. My handle for that is epool88. That's EPOOLE and then 88 after that. Just give me a follow. Like I said, I post the majority of my artwork on Instagram. Sometimes on Twitter too. My Twitter handle is the same thing, epool88. That's it. I don't have a website. I usually just post online and go from there. So that's about it.
Cool. Is there anything we should look forward to in the near future from you, Eric?
We'll see. Baseball just ended. I just did all my baseball art. I usually do sports, baseball, football, and hockey. And I know everyone asks me about basketball, but I don't follow the NBA. So I have no plans on doing the NBA. Not yet. I'll say that. Not yet. Football playoffs will be coming up. Usually I take a nice month off from Thanksgiving to Christmas just to kind of, reset and kind of relax before the holidays, and then I'll pick things up back in New Year's, which is football playoffs. So NFL playoffs I'll start doing. That'll go through January, and then I'll pick up hockey in April, and I'll just post random stuff probably in between. So just go by the sports seasons. That's when I normally post.
When you, what are your more popular ones then, if you don't mind me asking? I know you probably started with the hockey, and is there one that's even more popular now out of like the other ones? Leagues?
No, truthfully, hockey is the most popular, which I find awesome because I love hockey the best out of all the sports. And I kind of didn't think that would be the case. I kind of figured once I started posting football art, that would go over really well. And it goes over well, but hockey is just like, I don't know if that's because of like foreign followers. Like I got a lot of followers in Russia and Scandinavia and places like that where they have hockey but no football. But definitely the hockey stuff's the most popular. The piles, really popular at the end of the Stanley Cup pile is probably my most popular thing. So it's like, well, I won't stop that anytime soon. Really just once the hockey playoffs go around, that's when, those are my most popular stuff. So I'll continue to do it until people don't like it, and then I'll stop. So,
well, Eric, on behalf of Jablam Hockey, thank you for doing it. I love hockey the most as well, and I think it does work well with hockey the most too. So I'm kind of not surprised on that, but keep doing it. I love it, and I know my old pal Paul loves it. He's a Pittsburgh Penguins fan, so he introduced me to you, so he likes it as well. Thank you, and keep doing it, Eric.
All right, I will. Thank you very much.
Bringing back to the show, we're doing the segment Fantasy Up and Down, and we have a special guest, Hayden Soboleski. Did I say that right? Soboleski?
Soboleski.
I said it wrong again. All right. Before we started recording, I said it the European way. That was wrong. Soboleski is correct. Okay. Soboleski is correct. Damn it, I suck today. All right. Let's get right into it, Hayden. I can say Hayden right. All right.
Yes, you can.
All right. You can follow Hayden on Twitter at Soboleski. No, I said it wrong again. Soboleski. No, I said it wrong again. Let's just spell it out.
Let's just spell it out for everyone.
Perfect. Soboleskih. What is your background?
My grandfather's Polish. My grandmother's Hungarian.
So, Soboleski is maybe the way they pronounce it?
It could be. From my understanding, at one point before passport translations, it was Sobolewski.
Ah, yes. And then sometimes, for some reason, I don't know why, but sometimes European players change the letters differently when it correlates to English language. I don't know why. Like a Nikolai Kulemin, and then in Russian it's Kulyomin, and it's spelled very different.
Yeah, sometimes the Y's get added and dropped.
Yep. All right. But Hayden is the senior associate editor for DobberProspects, McKean's Yearbook, and Mile High Hockey contributor. Welcome to the show, Hayden.
Thank you. Glad to be on.
So enough of me stumbling on your last name. Let's get right into some fantasy hockey stuff. First off, Hayden, introduce yourself. How long have you been doing this whole hockey fantasy thing, and why?
Well, I've been into fantasy hockey way too long. I played hockey growing up, like a lot of Canadian kids. Really loved the fantasy sports as soon as I kind of discovered them. I was probably a little bit late to the game as a teenager growing up in a small town, but as soon as I started entering kind of the weekly hockey pools on CBC and Sportsnet, I really got more into it, and then kind of discovered the real world of fantasy sports after that, into the yearly leagues and the keeper leagues and the dynasty leagues. And as soon as I realized that world was out there, I really dove in head first. And then for the last 4 years, I've been writing and editing for DobberProspects.com. Started out as the team writer for the Colorado Avalanche, and then worked my way up the ladder as a junior editor, associate editor, and now I'm the senior associate editor for the site. I'm very proud of it, and occasionally I contribute articles to Mile High Hockey. I contributed to the McKean's yearbook this year, and really just happy to take on any opportunities I get asked to do regarding the fantasy hockey world.
Perfect. So how many leagues are you in right now? I know, and Paul Zwombeg, who referred me to you, I know at one point he was telling me he was in like 10 leagues a season, and now he's a busy family man, so he's down to 3 or 4, I guess. What was your max leagues at one point that you had, and what are you at now this year?
Yeah, I don't think I can match Paul his 10 leagues a season. That's pretty crazy. Depending on the year, I'm more closer to 4 or 5 leagues per year, depending on how much maintenance they really require on a day-to-day basis. There's only so many hours in the day, unfortunately. But I have been getting more and more into daily fantasy with DraftKings, which keeps me nice and busy.
Nice. All right, let's get into some fantasy hockey talk. What are your big 3 fantasy ups and 3 fantasy downs in terms of picking up players and dropping players this week?
So a lot of what I'm looking into right now is the long-term games. We're getting into kind of the quarter mark of the season. People are starting to settle in on who they're relying on for the season, who they believe are their scorers, and who they think are droppable. So I'm really starting to target some guys that for the rest of the season should be picking things up, even if they're a little risky sounding at the moment. But one guy I've been looking at is Nino Niederreiter from Minnesota. He's been a little bit hot lately. I think he's up to around 5 points in 6 games or similar to that. He's been on a 20-goal pace for 4 straight years. He only has 1 so far this year. Even if it's a down year for him, that's not going to stay that way. This guy goes on hot streaks, and it's only a matter of time until he starts catching up. Trocheck on Florida, he's actually producing really well, just under a point per game, I think. But he's been very assist-heavy so far. He looks like a good candidate to start turning those assists into goals. Again, he's just one of those guys that his career paces are reasonably consistent, and given his shooting rate, he's going to start turning more assists into goals. And then similar to Niederreiter is Max Pacioretty. Like it feels wrong to say it's a no-brainer because being bad is being bad, but his shot pace is still good for over 200 this season. He's still getting power play time, even though it's not quite as much as it was on Montreal. It really seems like it's only a matter of time before he starts producing closer to what people expected going into the season.
Yeah, I have Trocheck, and he's a little cold for me, but I am also at the same time expecting he'll turn it around.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool. And what do you have for guys you think people should drop?
I hate to say it as a Colorado writer over at DobberProspects, but Landeskog on the massive big 3 line of McKinnon, Rantanen, and himself, he's the only one with kind of a ridiculous shooting percentage right now. He's shooting at 24%, and that would be high even if it was one of the superstars shooting that. But that's not sustainable. And as amazing as he's been on that line, and he's going to stay on that line for the whole season, but the amount he's contributing to it is probably going to regress a little bit in the next couple months. Another guy that I'm cooling off on is Ryan Hartman in Nashville. He's historically he's been a fantastic Roto League player. He's getting you the hits, the penalty minutes, everything. He got a bunch of points in Chicago and then dropped off a cliff a little bit. And even though the points are coming a little bit more this year than they did last year, His hitting rate is way down. His penalty minute rate is down. His blocked shots rate is down. He's just not looking like the all-around multi-category option that he looked like a couple of years ago. Not quite to the level he was at anyways. Mm-hmm. And then one more guy that is most likely to make me look stupid for saying this is Evgeny Malkin on Pittsburgh. The whole team's in a bit of a slump, but he's still been scoring fantastically. But his shot percentage is even higher than it usually is. He's got a long injury history, and I still don't trust him to stay healthy for an entire season. It just seems like he's just ready to let your team down in a bad time if you're in a head-to-head league that might get into a dire situation battling for a playoff spot down the line.
So if you have a player like a Gabriel Landeskog or a Evgeny Malkin, do you recommend then trying to trade and recoup somebody of similar value then? Is that the plan?
Yeah, those would be good sell-high candidates because they're still useful players. It's not like they're going to drop off a cliff and stop being useful. You just have to make sure that if you can get assets in return that are going to be more useful than they will be once they regress, that's the goal. You just want a net gain over the course of the season.
All right.
Especially in keeper and dynasty formats. You have to think about the long run. If there's a chance to turn a Landeskog into someone who can produce the way Landeskog's doing right now all season long, you have to take chances like that.
Sounds good. All right. For looking at underrated players, or maybe specifically an underrated player in specific stats, are there any players you recommend, like if they're good at plus minus or hitting in an underlying category that people aren't usually looking at, that you're like, okay, well, I'm usually good at goals or assists or wins for my goalies, but a category I'm not looking at might be undervalued and could help my team on a week-to-week, one-on-one basis. Who's a player or a player or two that you'd recommend for that?
One guy that I've been looking at that for is a rookie defenseman that gets a little less talked about than some of the big names out there, but Yoki Haru on Chicago is actually putting up pretty good shots on goal numbers for a defenseman. It's over two shots on goal per game on average. He's averaging over 20 minutes a game, even higher lately. He's on the top pairing with Keith quite often, and over the course of the year, as some of those older defensemen on the team start tiring out, there's a good chance, I think, that he starts picking up even more minutes, maybe gets some power play time if they want to give Keith a rest, and if he can get even more shots on goal, good. And if he starts actually adding some goals to his repertoire, that would be nice too. He's already picking up assists at a pretty good pace. He just seems like a good kind of under-the-radar rookie defenseman that has the potential to get even more of a role down the road.
Yeah, he was a player I was actually thinking about, but at rookies, they're so unpredictable, and I barely get to watch Hawks games, so I don't get to see his value or his skill set at least enough.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and then is there any fantasy tip that you'd like to give out there for people that would really help people out there?
Well, I kind of touched on it earlier that this really is the best time of year to really start looking into selling high and buying low. This doesn't mean trading a better player for a worse player under any circumstances, but if you can trade a player that's hot and producing at a good rate for a player that can reliably produce at that rate for a whole season and is just maybe underproducing a little bit now, then now's the time to do it, because we're at the time of year where people are starting to fall in love with certain players on their team and fall out of love with other people on their team that have just been letting them down for a couple of fantasy weeks. Now is the perfect time to try and peg one of those underperforming guys that you know can be reliable down the road. Now's the time to swing for it.
Yeah, I've got a guy like Hornqvist, and we all know how Pittsburgh is kind of changing things up now and maybe trying to move some of the dead weight, I guess. Is he a guy you'd recommend I should move, or should I just drop him and add a person that might help me week to week?
Hornquist seems to always stick around in the top 6, and on a team like Pittsburgh that they need to push for a spot. It's not like they're in a position where they need to give young players their shot. I do believe that Hornquist will continue to get chances in the top 6, and even if he's playing on the third line, he's still going to be on the top power play unit more often than not. So even though he's older, even though he goes in his slumps, I've been burned before by not believing in Hornquist, so I've learned my lesson. I think he's worth holding on to at least until Pittsburgh really stabilizes their lines and figures out who they're going to lean on to score some goals, because you don't want to give up on the guy that gets hot playing with Malkin or Crosby.
Cool. Thanks for coming on the show, Hayden. If you have any fantasy tips or questions, you can always tweet us at Jablam Hockey. You can tweet me, or you can even, if you want, just ask Hayden some questions on Twitter. You can follow him on Twitter at SOBOLESKIH. Hayden, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, all you fans out there who've been tweeting at Jablam Hockey, at Russia98, and go out there and please tweet Logan at Hoagie99. You can also go to our Instagram account. Now we're going to be putting up all the episodes and the blogs and our great images from Justin and Brett on there, so you can check out our art out there. But we've been getting some replies and emails, and so we're going to have a bit of a mailbag segment here at the end of this episode. First question was, how do you see the William Nylander saga play out? Logan, any thoughts?
I actually do see him being traded. I don't know for what or who. There's no front runner. But at this point, I do think there's going to be some resentment on Toronto's end. So if you, who was the last guy that they did? Turris, I think. Like they signed him, they traded him, and that was it. I kind of see that being the same for Nylander.
You think the Leafs are going to be doing a sign and trade? Maybe?
Or trade and sign, probably more likely.
Okay.
Just the way the salary cap area is nowadays.
Yeah. I'm still have faith in my GM Dubas. And I'm going to go with him still waiting for December 1st to recouping that $500,000. I don't know why you would wait 2 months into the season just to save $500,000 on the cap, but maybe that's the plan.
Yeah.
I guess if you sign him for 5 years, maybe this year, and it doesn't matter with their cap this year, but for the next 4 remaining years, it's pretty much $500,000 that he's saving per year for the cap. So, hey, every dollar helps, I guess, right?
When it comes to Marner and Matthews, yes, it does.
So, all right. Another question we had was Brodeur the greatest goalie in the modern era? My response to that is he's a part of the big three, and that's Patrick Roy, Brodeur, and Dominic Hasek. I think all three are in the top pretty much almost 5 in history. I think those are the best 3 in the recent era, and maybe not compare them to anybody right now. I don't know who you'd pull out right now because those 3 were just so dominant in that era, right?
Yeah.
It's such an offensive era, too, so it's so hard to compare the numbers of the goalies that played in the 80s and 90s versus the goalies that played in the last 5 to 7 years, right?
Yeah, it does change. Even now, like the equipment's changed and the goals have gone up, it seems, exponentially. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I would agree. I would still put him above Hasek.
Yeah?
I don't know if I could put him above Waugh, but I can't go against either of them, like any of them. I would agree with that era. There was only the three, and any night they could steal a game for any team.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I have Hasek slight edge over Brodeur and a Brodeur with a slight edge over Montreal, and I don't know if that's just their teams playing a better defensive game or team game more than Montreal's or what, but Hasek just seemed that he dominated.
He had
just like his name.
Yeah.
He just did. And he could stonewall you almost over such a long period of time as well. So
his style was just so different that it seemed like he came from a different era, even though he was along for the ride with the other two. And even Brodeur to Waugh seemed their style was similar, but there was differences as well.
Yeah, I think all three were great, and it's hard to put one over the other. But they were. I think all three of them are pretty much in the top five you can talk about.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree with that as well.
And last but not least, somebody decided to ask me this question: if the Leafs do not make the Stanley Cup Finals, will this season be considered a bust? No, I don't know. I don't think so.
I would
Why
say
would
yeah.
it be? Yeah, you would. You don't.
I would
you would
say
think
yeah.
so.
Well, the last two seasons, they've actually gotten better in the last two seasons. So the 2 seasons ago, they made Game 6 of the Stanley Cup, or the first round of the Stanley Cup Finals. Last year, they made Game 7. This year, you have to make it to the second round, or it's a bust for me. You have to keep getting better.
Yeah, but the question says if they do not make the Stanley Cup Finals.
Oh, finals.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, then no. Sorry, I totally misread that or misheard that. I probably misread it and misheard it.
I wouldn't consider the finals bust. Maybe second round, yeah. Like you were mentioning, second round is a bit of a bust. But again, when you're battling against a team like the Bruins or the Lightning in the first round, if the Leafs played Tampa in the first round, they lose in Game 7. That's still not a bust in my opinion. Like, they're both huge contenders this year now. And if either one of them loses, I don't even consider it a bust almost for Tampa if they lose to the Leafs in the first round per se, and then the Leafs obviously go down. Or say it's a war zone, and it has happened before many times. Pittsburgh versus Philadelphia or Colorado versus Detroit or something, and maybe that war is so bad that you can't make it up to the second round. You are emotionally drained as well for the next round.
You kill each other. Yeah, you kill each other in the first round, and you have nothing left in the tank for the second, right?
Yeah, that's happened many times before.
Yeah.
So if the Leafs have a bit of an opening and an easier first round per se, I think that gives them momentum. And if they have that momentum, I could consider, yes, if they have the momentum and they've already won an easier first round and they might not have to play Tampa in the second round, then yes. Then I might consider it a bit of a bust if they don't make conference or finals then. I would consider that maybe.
Yeah, but the optics is going to have to, you have to see what it is leading into it, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Currently right now, Stanley Cup Finals, if they don't make it, that's not a bust to me.
Yeah, it's
if,
not,
if they're at the top of the division and they don't make the Stanley Cup Finals, maybe, but it does depend on if they have to go through the Bruins and the Lightning to get there.
Mm-hmm. All right, that's it for this episode of Jablam Hockey. Check us out next week. But again, go to our website, jablamhockey.com. You can go into our overtime page, and you can subscribe to the podcast right there. Or you can go right on Stitcher or iTunes, and you subscribe to us there. Please subscribe, rate, and review us. And, of course, please contact us on our website, jablamhockey.com, or on our Instagram account. Check our episode pictures. And you can tweet at me, at Russia98, at Logan, at Hoagie99, or at JablamHockey. And send us some comments or questions, and we might respond to you on our mailbag. Until next week, bye.